super thin skin, held up longer than I was falling.
Welcome to Center Stage, the documentary podcast. Each week, our group of intrepid researchers and music archivists dig through the record crates of the world, looking for that one artist to take center stage. Using a patent-pending algorithm and spirited debate, we pick one artist. Once that is settled, we invite that artist into Thunderlove Studio to chat with your hosts Keith R. Higgins and Jeff Calhoun. When we're lucky, they say yes. Our mission with Center Stage is simple: to make sure the recorded work of artists remains, or in some cases lands on, the cultural radar. We invite you to sit back and relax. Thank you for joining us.
Jeff Calhoun, who do we have on this week?
It's Jeff Garber. It's Jeff Garber from Castor and Year the Rabbit and National Skyline. And if I'm speaking too quickly, it's because I have a little extra excitement for this guest. I am very enthusiastic about their music. Perhaps disproportionately so, but that's okay. I hope you'll forgive the little extra twinkle in my eye. Because I love deeply all three of those bands. Yeah, it's, Keith, sometimes genres are a really stupid thing to use, especially the artists themselves are like, it's rock and roll. It doesn't need to be any fancier than that. Sometimes genre descriptions are useful when we talk about these things. And I think in this conversation, the genre, like the micro genre, is useful because Jeff has deep roots in both the Midwest emo scene, which is like a really specific sound and look and vibe, and the space rock scene, which also is a specific sound and look and vibe. And to have run in both that kind of failure, hum, shiner circle is really important to some people. So I think there's some fantastic stories. I hope you'll stick around for the entirety of the episode because there's little treats sprinkled all throughout. Jeff's wonderful. Can't wait for you to listen to this conversation with Jeff Garber of Castor.
We are rolling.
Jeff Garber. Yeah, meet my friend Keith Higgins.
Hey, Jeff.
Hi, Keith.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Welcome to the show. Thank you.
It has been a very remastery kind of year for you.
Yeah. That's one of my many hats that I wear sometimes.
My wife knows you best as the composer who did the Virgin River score, and main theme.
Yeah,
I know you best from your band Castor from the mid to late 90s in the Midwest.
Mm-hmm.
Other people might know you from National Skyline or Year of the Rabbit, and I suggest we talk about all of it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I know. It's funny.
Let's start with Castor because I think that's the most recent publication anyway.
Yeah.
And folks can now go and buy this lovely vinyl pressing of and clarify for me because there's kind of it's both of the full-length Castor albums. One of them is labeled remaster. One of them is labeled remix. So were you able to remix the second full-length, but not the first one, or didn't want to remix the first album?
No,
I also love that production process.
I mean, well, for starters, I hate when people mess with their old records, and it's kind of every time somebody does it. Like the Replacements have been doing it on a couple of their records, and I hate it. And I'm a huge Replacements fan, and they did Tim, and they did another one, Don't Tell a Soul, and I hate the new Don't Tell a Soul because they took all the sheen off of it and just made a regular record, which was exactly what I did. However, having said that, back when we made the record, it's not that I didn't love the mix at all or whatever, the way it turned out, but I did a lot of double tracking on the vocals, and I just kind of hated it. I hated what I had done in the studio, and I only did it that way because I think I was just like super inexperienced. I wasn't really ready to record. You record those things in a weekend, and so I doubled a lot of the vocals, and it just, at the end of the day, didn't really sound like how we sounded live in a way, So cut to, I don't know, 20 some odd years later, somehow our bass player Derek had access. He somehow became the owner of the 2-inch tapes. He got them, from the studio, or he might have got them from Paul, the guy that recorded us. I'm not really sure, but he ended up with the tapes, and they sat in his closet for 20 years or so. And I'd always wanted to maybe remix it if we ever could. And in those 20 years, I'd become somewhat of an engineer, and I learned how to work Pro Tools, and I learned a thing or two, and I mixed a few things here and there. So I was like, if I ever get the opportunity, I want to try to get this record sounding the way that the band sounds. And I just kind of wanted it a little bit drier. I just wanted I wanted sort of the indie emo version of the record, as opposed to the version we put out had a lot of sheen on it, and it sounded awesome. And I'd always wanted it to just kind of sound like Castor a little bit more. So lo and behold, we got out those tapes, and sure enough, tapes sitting around for 20 years can get, corroded. They can, I'm not exactly sure what happens to them, but you can't just lay those up on a 2-inch tape machine, because something bad will happen. So we're tight with Matt Talbot, who, owns the record label and that the album came out on. And he's in that band Hum, and he has a studio in Tolono, Illinois. So he's like, I know how to do this. We're going to put these tapes in a rehydrating machine. But somehow that does something. Maybe it takes it makes them not dry. I think they're really dry if they sit around for too long. So he did some sort of magic, and he cooked them up, and he threw them up on his machine, and lo and behold, he transferred them to Pro Tools for me. So everything worked. Like I got a beautiful, 24, 48-bit transfer of those tapes, and it was kind of magical. It was just cool to have a little piece of history that I could just open up on my home computer and take 6 years to go ahead and remix it in spare time. Sorry for the long story, but it's just a weird one. Bands hardly get the opportunity to do that. It's not really something that you should do. I don't recommend it, but we actually got some really cool results because I took years and years and years to do it. We traded tapes for a long time, and we got it sounding the way we wanted it to sound. And people love it. Like, we've gotten nothing but great responses from it. And there's a few people that want to hear the old one too, and we'll re-release that one in time and put the 97 version up too. But the new one's clear. It's sort of like it sounds sort of like what we always sort of wanted it to sound like.
Amazing. I confess that I did an A/B on a couple of tracks and listening to the 2025 version of Anecdotes makes me wonder what the response would have been had the record sounded like that in 90, was that 95?
Yeah, I don't know. It didn't get the response that we wanted. I know that. And some, there was a few reviews, and they were like, people really liked our first record because the first record's way more subdued. It's way more indie rock. It's way more, influenced by more lo-fi indie bands like Sevedo and Slint and Tortoise. But then, we started hanging around with Hum and Shiner and all these bands that, rocked a lot harder. So we decided that we wanted to rock a lot harder. And that version that we put forward that's what we wanted to sound like at the time. But maybe it was a little bit too over the top or something. I don't know. Because, a few reviews started to roll in and people were like, what happened to the band we liked?
Wow.
But then we got a new little crop of fans as well. But we only gave that record a few months of time to even be out before we decided to break up. So it was sort of all for naught, anyways.
It's so interesting to talk about what influenced you to sound, heavier, mathier, whatever, with the benefit of 20 plus years of hindsight, I look back on those songs now and I think, I wonder if your band had any influence on the San Diego scene. I listened to a band like No Knife. I listened to all the Rob Crow projects like Heavy Vegetable and Thingy and all those, pre records. How in my mind, you can't have No Knife without Castor.
I know. I doubt that. The funny thing about, I listened to the Dianoga episode that you guys did, and the funny thing was when all of our bands were around, we were bands that would sell 1,000 to 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 CDs. Dianoga got a little bit bigger than everybody else did because they stayed together quite a bit longer than the rest of us did. But, Castor is a 3-year thing and it's over, and at the time, you're not talking about a huge reach. Some of our cohorts were starting to get that big reach. The only real tour we did for Tracking Sounds Alone was opening the first week of the Promise Rings Nothing Feels Good tour. And all of a sudden, they were exploding and becoming hugely popular, right in front of our eyes. And we had, known them for a couple of years already. We had been playing shows with them since the beginning. And all of a sudden bands like Promise Ring and Braid and all the other bands were picking up a lot of fans. And the response to Castor was always a little bit of trepidation. And
Really?
a lot of, sometimes just blank stares. We would always sell CDs, but I think we always dreamt that we would be a lot, we were watching it happen. Our friends were in Hum. They were huge. All the bands that we knew were becoming successful. And I think we were becoming a band's band, where all the bands liked us and all the bands wanted to bring us out and let us open for them and play shows. But fans, we never really found a 10,000 person fan base. We found a few thousand person fan base, which is what we still kind of have. But, my hope is that with kind of the remix and to have that record sounding appropriate to what I think it should have sounded like as far as the time it came out, I think it'll find a new home, and I think it'll trickle in a little bit more now. Now everything's kind of out on Spotify, and it's doing fine. I mean, we've sold a pleasant amount of those records, and I'm really happy.
Fantastic. It does sounds terrific. As someone that can A/B those different recordings,
right.
It's
cool.
It's a wonderful modernization, and there is a kind of thing happening with like this new generation of kids that are like, hey, have you heard of this band Hum? They're amazing. You're like, yeah, I was.
Yeah.
I was a 1995 kid.
Yeah. Well, somebody reached out the other day because they're writing a Midwest emo book. There's Midwest emo now. Well, not now, but there's a term for it, and there's a term for all of the things that we were doing when we were kids. So it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool to have been there, and it's cool I really wanted to have the record there and have everything available in case anybody finds it now. Now it could be a little thing that people find on their own, and it's cool. And we play shows. We seem to be playing one show per year.
Yeah.
And we're playing next week with Braid in Chicago, and we haven't played with Braid, and it's got to be 27 years. I don't know. Bob Nana from Braid put it up the other day. It's been a long time. So,
as someone that had a band in 1995, put it down for 20 years, and is now back on stage with that same band, midlife crisis rock is amazing. It's super fun.
It's daunting, but I get so nervous about it because Castor's a funny band. It's almost like we're just trying. It's like four people playing a different song simultaneously. So to have it not completely fall off the train tracks is like our best hope. And so far, I think we've done 3 reunion shows. They've all gone really well. So, knock on wood. We're older now. I know all the words, which is different than in the 90s. And, I guess when you're our age, you're like, I'm going to play this exactly how it's supposed to be. And, you just try really hard to. Because people are coming to see you. People, even if you're playing to 200 or 300 people are flying in.
Yeah.
Like people will be like, I just flew in from Atlanta or Tennessee, and you have to give they're going to see you one time in their life, and you kind of have to give them the show that they're expecting. So I take it super seriously. I get a ton of anxiety about it, and I'm already melting down for next week.
Oh boy. Yeah. What is there a tune that playing it live now with the 20 plus years of context, is there a song that you get to perform now that you're like, we did pretty good with this one?
A couple of them are really fun to play, and some of them, like I said, it's just like holding on for dear life. I mean, that's just me personally. I have a lot of anxiety anyways, but we have a song called Silent Type, which is like the second song we ever wrote, and it's probably my favorite song to play. what we usually do is we play a few from the first record and then we kick into the second record. And I always love kicking into the second one, and really because the energy kind of it hops up, and it's usually it's fun. You can't say it's not fun. It's always fun to do something like that, especially now because people won't just blankly stare. They'll get into it. It's maybe.
And the vinyl is beautiful, by the way.
We did, we reached back out to our old friend Andy Mueller, who designed he designed both of our albums, and Andy and I are rival softball competitors now here in Los Angeles. And my team won first place this year, and beat his team has won it the past 2 years, and we just finally won. So I think I'm retiring because I'm tired of trying to best them. But Andy's this awesome artist that he did a lot of Midwest bands. He did a lot of art, and I hit him up, even though it's super annoying. Almost everybody that Andy's dealt with, almost every band he's done artwork for has made him go back into his archives, dig everything out so they can make vinyl. And that goes from, I think he probably worked with Dianoga. I'm not sure, but he did C-Clamp, and he had to do all those hum reissues, So I don't know, those hard drives and stuff that he has to pull this from. I can't even imagine what computer he sticks those into to make those things work. But he did, I think he has to pull things off CDs and stuff. He literally did an amazing job archiving everything. And, those things that's a 6-month process for him to dig that stuff out, lay it out, But yeah, I think it came out. It couldn't have come out any better. I couldn't ask for a better version of that album.
I mean, gee whiz, you've got rehydrating machines involved in this. You've got old hard drives that we're rummaging through for art.
Oh yeah, and it literally took. We did our first reunion show in 2018. And that's when we did the rehydration. So I've literally been sending those guys mixes for years.
Wow.
But on the other hand, I work full time on, multiple TV shows, and that would be just something I would do for 15 minutes a week, because usually I'm super buried composing. So it's not like I was doing it all the time. It would be the little fun thing I got to do when I was stressed out about TV work or something,
Yeah.
But yeah, it was it was so much work. It was the most incredible amount of work that I've ever done to just, get them all right. I think, there's probably 7 versions of every one of those songs, but we finally got it where we wanted it. And it was weird. It came out on August 1st. And I'm like, okay, it's finally over. We got it all up on Spotify, and all the, just a long haul to get that thing done. And now I guess we start writing new songs so we can start all over again.
That was going to be the next question. Does performing together and experiencing these new mixes make you want to write as a group again?
Yeah, for sure. It's funny because our other guitar player and songwriter, Ben, he has a couple of riffs that he keeps showing me, and it just sounds like the next day. It sounds like the day after tracking Sounds of Load, because it's just, I'm like, oh my gosh. So we gotta get focused and figure out how to start trading some files and doing some recording, because I can kind of dial it in. If I listen to our music for an hour while I'm rehearsing or something, I can sort of get my brain back into the mode of how to write a song like that. Because, a lot of bands come back and try to make music again, and 90% of the time I don't like it. I don't like when they do I don't like when they do that. There's a few exceptions. I really love the Hum record that came out, 20 some odd years later. And I think Bray did a good job. They came back with an EP. I mean, sometimes it works, but for the most part, it's the band's almost completely different because they're older. Yeah. But I have a dream to I'm pretty sure I could tell my brain to be let's I want you to dial back in. We're going into 1998. What do you think your influences would have been? Because it would have started to change. Like everybody turned Radiohead after OK Computer. So
yep,
I would have started getting, I got to be like, well, where would I have gone songwriting wise?
Well, it's an interesting fork in the road in 98 and regionally. You invoked that name Midwest emo.
Mm-hmm.
There's some of the circles that you have run with, Shiner, Failure, Hum, those bands all got called space rock.
Yeah.
There's this whole space rock genre that kind of sits aside from Midwest emo.
Yeah.
I think Promise Ring probably straddles that border a little bit, and Castor definitely straddles that border. And then what you did with National Skyline.
Yeah, that was like the evolution. Well, yeah, everything sort of sits. It's funny because if you look like inside the album, we made sure to put all of our little posters in there because the lineups are hilarious because it's Castor, Dianoga, Hum, and it's like 4 genres at one show. But we didn't, I don't know if all the genres were created quite yet.
Yeah.
So all that talk came and all the names for things kind of came later. We just were all regional groups, Right. I mean, Hum probably was always space rock for sure. And nobody dared say the word emo for a long time because it was such a bad word to say. And I think now it's starting to, it's okay to say it. It's fine. And we, the first few tours we ever did were with Braid, and we didn't know what that music was. We just knew those guys as a local band. So they kind of showed us what that was, because it was all happening. It was really blossoming when Braid was getting going. And it's mostly an ethos of like, we're going to do a show at a VFW hall. We're going to, it came after what Fugazi laid out. They laid out like you could do, you don't have to play at a 21 and over bar. You can play at a VFW hall. You can play at a kid's basement. You can play anywhere. You can play at a pizza parlor. Like, doesn't matter as long as you can bring the music. And that was all sort of happening. And that's what emo was. It was sort of the birth of, we can do this anywhere. And, it was loud, it was fast. And at that time, Castor was slow and weird. But we, I think eventually people would have liked it. Because like nowadays, nobody has any sort of, nobody cares what you listen to.
No.
But in the 90s, it's like, I listen to this and I don't really jump out of that zone. I remember always feeling like there were a lot more rules in the late 90s. Like you had to be this or that, and you kind of had to look like this or that, or else people kind of give you a side eye. Like now you could wear anything you want to a concert. The sillier, the better, really.
Depending on the concert.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just sort of, it's funny how kids nowadays, they don't care what genre anything is. But back in our day, it felt like we had to, it always felt like we were writing in very tight constraints. And, because I was probably I grew up way more being influenced by The Cure and the Smiths. And I was kind of into that kind of thing. And you could never, ever bring that sort of thing into a Castor at that time. Nowadays, that's sort of par for the course. You'd have to bring that element into your music, in order to be cool. So, we were, you couldn't really bring a delay pedal and a chorus pedal into our band at that time, and that was fine because we were on a different trip. But looking back, Hum did bring the Cure and stuff into their music. I don't know if they necessarily knew they were, but but they just did it super heavy and super cool. So I don't know. I'm off on a tangent.
That's what we're here for. That's what this is for.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was reading a review of Castor today by someone on Reddit, of all places.
Mm-hmm.
And they referenced Champaign specifically as being the birthplace of Midwest emo, and cited that American football record and the very famous house, and then invoked your name and of course Braid and Hum, and it's incredible how many important bands came out of that city in terms of your influence on other people, other bands, other musicians.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I think because of the close proximity to Chicago, because Chicago's really the real birthplace. So in the
post had a different thing. That was
but in the post,
Veruca Salt and Fig Dish.
Yeah, because those bands were bigger, but brewing underneath all that, Bob Nana from Braid, he was in, whatever, that band that he was with from the, and they were talking about on the Dianoga interview, like I think it's called Gage. There was that scene was sort of birthed up in Chicago, or in the suburbs at least, because Cap and Jazz was there too, way before everybody else was.
Right.
As Cap and Jazz splits up, the Promise Ring comes out of that, and so does Joan of Arc. But the roots of that emo are right there. And then Bob forms Braid right around that time. And then, some of those guys come down to college in Champaign, so that it just sort of got lucky that way. But I think the real birthplace is probably Chicago, but everybody was just in school in Champaign, and then Champaign was just a mecca for music in general. It was almost like what you would consider a mini Austin or something. Just at that time, there would be there had to have been at least 4, 5, 6 places you could play a show. And so you could do anything from like all ages things to 21 and over thing, or 19 and over, because it's a college town. So, you only have to be 19 to go. So there was just so many venues, and it was such a lively scene. And because the Poster Children were there, and they were already signed and doing well. Hum was signed, doing well. Menthol signed. All these bands are on major labels, so it was really hopping at that time. Yeah. So any kid from anywhere around the place was like, why not go there? The rent is cheap, and there's a college. It has everything you could want from a town. It's a great, great place.
Yeah.
And you can see a band 4 nights a week. And you can become friends with the band and hang out with the bands and go drink beer with the band. So it was awesome.
Is that a Midwest thing? Just that approachability?
Maybe so, because Chicago's a little different because it's a little harder edged. Everybody's a little bit more, guarded. If that's a word, And when I came to LA, another completely different scene. Yeah, I guess the Midwest is sort of funny because we would just see like the Braid guys walking around going from party to party, and you just start, let's hang out with you guys. Maybe we should play a show. Do our bands sound like anything like each other? No, but we sure do like hanging out every day, So yeah, that's how it was. And from the minute we met Hum, we got I think our second or third show was opening for Hum. Like literally like the week their album came out with Stars on it. And, they couldn't have been any nicer. And I made friends with most of them that night, and we've been friends since. So, it's just one of those towns. Maybe it's a Midwest thing. I don't know. I mean, it's certainly I miss it. I do miss that like camaraderie and all that stuff that goes with a place like that.
Tell me about the transition from deciding Castor was going to break up to starting National Skyline with Jeff from Hum.
Yeah. Well,
obviously you got along well enough to start a band with one.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Castor, by all accounts, is probably your typical college band in the sense that you're kind of a college band, and unless you get a bunch of fans, and then all of a sudden you transition into a real band, But for the most part, you know, a couple of us were in community college. Our bass player was at the U of I, and you know, we were kind of busy. You're almost too busy to actually function as a band. So unless something's really taking off, it's hard to keep it going.
Yeah.
And I think we were a bit disappointed by the results, like the reviews and stuff from Tracking Sounds Alone. We had super high hopes for it, and it didn't do what we wanted it to do, and just sort of deflates you sometimes. And when you're young, and those are the times where you really need to be focused on what you're going to do as a musician. And arguably, I might have been more of from the time I can remember, I always wanted to be a rock star from 2 or 3 on, you know. I was always banging on something, or I played drums my whole life until my dad gave me a guitar instead because drums were too loud. And I've always just wanted to be a musician. There was never a time in my life where I didn't want to be a musician. And I was probably annoying in that sense because there's one guy in your band that will do anything humanly possible to do this, and then maybe another guy's like, I'm just doing this for fun. And you know, you rarely have 4 people that are going to be like, I got to do this. This is my life. And I think, and those are the bands that go out and tour for years and years and years and years, and they finally make it because you have to have that kind of dedication. But when people kind of start graduating college and getting girlfriends, and real life comes quick.
Sure does.
So it wasn't a huge breakup or anything. I think we just never practiced again. You know, we kind of played a final show, I think, and it was a little sad because, you know, we all came from the same town, and but I had these, you know, I had dreams. I had things that I knew that I had to do, and Jeff, being in Hum, you know, he had seen some success, and he was a good mentor, and he was a great person to try to work with because he was actually willing to. He was like, I'll invest some money and put a little home studio in my house, and we can record over there, because he would have lots of downtime in between touring and whatnot. And I think when National Skyline really got going, he was kind of on one of those down times, and he had enough time for us to sit around and make little recordings at his house, and that ended up becoming the first National Skyline EP. So it was, you know, it was an easy transition. I just wanted to play all the time, and you know, Castor was just getting to that point where we had rehearsed for 3 years straight, 4 or 5 times a week, and you just kind of get tired of everything, you know. And if people don't seem to love you, then maybe it's time to try something else, and maybe that's what happened. But again, yeah, National Skyline was a thing that obviously, I think Radiohead is out by then, and you can obviously hear the influence of things are changing in the music world.
Well, a song like A Night at the Drugstore, I think, serves as excellent foreshadowing for your composition work in TV and film.
Yeah.
You know, music becomes much more cinematic.
Yeah. And I always wanted it to be. And that's why I said I think I had those influences that I couldn't necessarily do in Castor so much. And they were starting to poke through more. And I was starting to bring those back into the fray. And maybe that's just because it was becoming cool again to do delays and, you know, way more guitar effects and stuff like that. So Yeah, I'd always try to put like a little piano piece on a record or something because I've always liked score. Score's been a big thing with me ever since I was a kid too. I loved like when I saw The Shawshank Redemption, I think I liked the music as much as the movie. Like I love music. I love score. So I kind of knew in the back of my mind that was something I always wanted to do too.
National Skyline has a lot longer, a lot more legs, I guess. You know, you've got, and if you go out to Bandcamp, the first 2 releases are available on Bandcamp, and then the catalog stops. But the National Skyline catalog is much bigger. You know, you even had sort of a singles compilation that gathered together a bunch of EPs and you know miscellany into a full length in 2014.
Well, National Skyline sort of inadvertently led to me moving to Los Angeles and meeting Ken Andrews and forming Year the Rabbit with him. And we did that for a couple of years, and that project sort of faltered as well. So I was sort of left with some recording equipment and being alone in a room. And I made a record called, I don't know what it's called, Bliss and Death. And I made it in, 2008 or 9 or something. And I called it National Skyline because I just didn't know. I loved the name. It was always just such a cool name. So I called it that. And that sort of caught the attention of some people at MTV, and it started getting a lot of placements. Like I started getting, at that time, you're kind of talking like recession years. People were always looking for like cheap music. And I had met a few people that worked at MTV, and I started getting some placements on like The Real World and Teen Mom and a few other shows like that, Jersey Shore. All of a sudden, before I knew it, MTV started their own in-house library. And they hired a few bands to start developing music for this library. So I sort of sullied the National Skyline name in a way because I made like 4 or 5 albums under that moniker, but really it was just music that was supposed to just go straight to TV.
Okay.
So it's not really music that I put my heart and soul into. It was more like, it was specific to certain things, and I just sort of lost the name in that way, but it's fine. It sort of led to me becoming a composer too, so it's fine. But that's the reason that there's so many National Skyline products, but really there's just the first 3 and then maybe one more. Then it gets a little diluted after that.
I think there's a lot of great music in there.
It's fine. I kind of get embarrassed that I should have called it something else because, now I feel like if I ever wanted to make a record and call it that, it's kind of screwed up now. So I don't know.
Tell me about Year of the Rabbit, because that's another record that got a remaster and a fresh press to vinyl this year. And I spoiler alert, Jeff, it is one of my favorite start to finish records of all time. I'm a big fan of that record. So
that's another, what a tale. I don't have that remaster. I got to get one. And when Ken put it out, we tried to all go to dinner one night, and like, I don't know, 2 of us were like, I can't come. So we don't have our records yet. So I got to go get one before they're gone. I heard it sounds awesome though. I mean,
it does.
I did like one little tour with National Skyline for that first EP, and somehow wound up in Los Angeles playing a show. And my old friend Tim Dow, who had played drums for Shiner, was living out here already, and he was playing with Ken. And they were in a band called On, because that was Ken's solo project after Failure. And they were they had done a tour, and they had kind of done an album cycle with that, and they were looking to make another record, a new record. But I think Tim had sort of not twisted Ken's arm, but had been begging Ken to kind of do another rock thing. So Tim was like, I think but for some reason they couldn't, find. I don't know why they couldn't just find a guitar player out here, but somehow it came to be that they wanted me to come out here and do an audition for this new group. So I did. Ken like flew me out here and for a weekend, and I hung out with those guys, and we just jammed. We jammed for 3 days. Just Ken, Tim, and myself. And I think we wrote a ton of music together. It was really like there was a spark right out of the gate where we could just jump in, and I'd start playing something, Tim would start playing something, and Ken would start playing something. And we gelled pretty good right away. And they had a few ideas written. So Ken proposed, me moving out there, and I did. And, it was kind of a huge dream of mine. I mean, honestly, I was a huge Failure fan. I was also a huge fan of Los Angeles and the weather. I'd done 26 years in Illinois. And the first time I ever came out here, I think the first place I stepped foot in was Santa Monica. And I remember sort of opening the van door, the ocean air hit me. And I was like, I'm never leaving. I was just like, oh my God, I can't believe this is a place. And so that was another thing that was kind of burning in me. Like I wanted to be on the West Coast. I wanted to be here. So it was all sort of magical. And I came here, and we quickly found a bass player, another guy from the Midwest. Our bass player Saul was from Chicago, and he was a recent transplant as well. So all of a sudden we had 4 people ready to be in a rock band and give it and talk about, that was 4 people that were literally ready to give their life to try to do it. And we did. And for a solid year, we wrote and recorded that whole record in our downtown loft. Ken recorded it. I helped him. He taught me everything there was to know, taught me how to mic everything up, taught me how to, engineer, and then eventually let me sit in on all the mixes and taught me all that stuff too. So it was, a huge learning experience. And at the time, I never knew what to think about that record. I never I was always sort of neutral on it. I loved being in the band, but I didn't know, Ken wrote most of the songs, and he would kind of bring in the song, and then we would all kind of add our own parts to them. But a couple of the songs we co-wrote, and I like those a lot too. And we we co-wrote Strange Eyes.
Okay.
So Strange Eyes is actually the only full band song where we all sort of contribute. Like we walked in the room and kind of wrote that song. But otherwise, Ken basically came in with fully developed ideas. So, it wasn't exactly, I always wanted a little bit more from the band, and we were starting to write more songs as sound checks and stuff. And we were starting to come up with some amazing stuff. I mean, it was great that he did it that way, and because we needed to get something going. And now when I listen to it, I love it as much as other people seem to, because what you just said there, I hear that a lot. Like, I hear people loving it all the time, and I listened to it a couple weeks ago, and I'm like, yeah, it's pretty damn good. But again, we put it out, and that wasn't exactly the response we got either.
Well,
No.
that Pitchfork review is something else, man.
Oh, I've never seen it.
Holy shit.
Oh,
that guy hated this record.
That's awesome. I got to read it. Well, yeah, Failure had a fan base, and we got to keep a little bit of it. So everybody was always happy when we came and played shows.
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely a great rock record.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a straight up like nuts and bolts rock record.
Well, I think much like what's happening with Hum right now, and this new generation of fans going, I'm just like the number of people clamoring for them to play live in spite of Brian passing is incredible.
Yeah,
and I think there was, before Failure was able to overcome their internal challenges and reunite, there was a wave of people that became fans of Failure after they'd broken up. And when they heard Hunted, that scratched an itch, man. That song was very in the pocket for Fantastic Planet.
Yeah. I loved Hunted. We started off on a great note, and there's a few songs that ended up on like Ken's Second On record that we had kind of written too, and I love those as well. I mean, I'm not saying I don't love it all. It's just that like I just wanted so much more. I wish we would have wrote another 20 songs.
Yes. Well, with the remaster and maybe fresh ears on it, is there a chance for you guys to get back in a room together? Because
you can't. Once he finally relit Failure, like he's been super busy with it ever since.
I assume you've seen the documentary they put out.
Yeah, and that I'm sure that took him. I know it took him years to get that done. I mean, I went to lunch with him a couple of years ago, but we're both like super busy, but I think Failure will be back again for another record soon. So there could be possibly. I sat down to write one time in the past couple of years, and I was like, this is kind of interesting, and I'd love to play with Tim again as well. Like, nothing's ever off the table. You know what I mean? That's how musicians are. You just never know when someone's gonna make the call and be like, hey, let's all get in a room together.
I think at a point in time in your 20s and maybe up to your early 30s, the idea that you should be loyal to one band makes some romantic kind of sense.
Right.
But I think once you cross that threshold into your 40s, you're like, I can be in 3 bands at once. This is fine.
Yeah. And I don't think that, the bands actually sounded a bit different. Like they're different enough to where I'm sure we could do it again,
Yeah.
Like I said, I just got to get in my, I'd have to switch my brain around. But quite honestly, I have not made a piece of regular music it's starting to get so long now. I don't know anymore. Like a piece, like here's a new song. Like I have not written a song in probably over 7 or 8 years now.
Wow.
Because scoring takes quite a bit out of me per day, and I have nothing left at the end of any given day. And if it's the weekend, I certainly don't want to come down to my studio. It's kind of composing sort of has taken a front seat, and now I find myself just listening to other composers and not listening to music as much as I should be. But as I become more successful as a composer, you sort of have to weigh the upside and downside of that.
People still clamor for Danny Elfman to tour with on Go Point.
Of course, yeah. And now that's what he does for fun. That's a fun thing he gets to go to.
Yeah.
But right now, like Danny is so successful, he can take a year off and go do something like that. When you're kind of a junior composer like me, I have to take every gig I possibly can and do everything humanly possible to keep moving forward in that part of my career.
It seems like you got very nice accolades for Virgin River. What's next?
Well, I'm still on. I was working on Virgin River an hour ago, so I'm working on season 7 right now, and we've been greenlit for season 8. So that's been a super pleasant little surprise in my life. Like a successful worldwide TV show is something that was never on my radar, and it just sort of happened. And it's been going for the better part of 6-7 years now. And that's that doing something like that's like 4 or 5 months out of the year. We do it every year. I started in May and I'll finish in October. And I do a golf show, like a golf docuseries for Netflix called Full Swing. I think we're going to do another one of those. I just picked up a Christmas movie, and I audition for things constantly. So you never, there's been periods in my life where I have 3 or 4 things happening simultaneously. And once that happens, I can't, I'm just down. I come to the studio at 8 a.m. and I leave at 10 p.m. It's just a constant roller coaster ride.
Sounds like a blessing to me.
It's a blessing for sure, but it gets a little lonely, and it gets frantic because the schedules are, they're pretty intense. Once the show starts, it's like the dates are there. You got everything's laid out for you. You can't really go anywhere. You can't you can't go on vacation. You can't really leave because, when you do an episode, you turn it in, the producers get around to notes, and then, Netflix gets around to notes. So you can't, no matter what you do, it's like, I might have to be back, we got to rush back to the studio, finish some notes. And then you're always doing the other episode. And if you're on a couple shows at a time, you're always doing something. But yeah, my music editor on Virgin River, he's like, you've written 1,100 songs since the show started.
Wow.
And that's just on one show. So
wow.
I think that's what leads. Yeah. Cause each episode has about 32 pieces of music.
Holy shit.
So, 15 or 16 of them are ones from last year or the season before following themes. So you get to reuse a little bit, but I usually have to write another 16, 17 songs every episode. So it's intense. And Virgin River is a funny one because I do everything by hand. I do it all on acoustic guitar and play piano. So it's all, I call it analog because I'm actually doing real things instead of just touching a MIDI keyboard or whatever. So, it's a hard one. It takes you got to mic everything up, and I got to play as delicately as humanly possible. And, there's a lot of finger picking. So it's a tough gig, even though it seems like it's easy breezy, kind of nice acoustic music, but there's a lot to it. And it's a pretty darn heavy load every week.
When you write music for that, are you writing to the show itself? Do you have it up on the screen? And
yeah,
you do.
Yeah. I have to my left here. I look at 2 monitors, and that's Pro Tools and my mixing. And then up on the big screen, I watch the show, and literally I just watch the scene, and I let it just talk to me. I don't ever write before I see it. I write simultaneously to what they're doing. So, because that way it's born out of whatever necessity the scene calls for. And I'll start with like a MIDI piano and write it on MIDI piano, and then I'll take it over and record the real piano. And, so it's a darn process, because you got to find the tempo of the scene, because scenes have a flow. Mm-hmm. So you got to figure out what that tempo is of the scene. And, and then there's action pieces. There's, shows, any drama is going to have action and love songs, romance. There's just so many different genres inside each episode too. So it's daunting. It can be pretty crazy, even on a fairly simple show like that. It's wild. But yeah, I write simultaneously as I watch it. But usually you have, first episode always sets up the new themes for the year. So everybody gets a new little motif, and you kind of bring those back each episode. And, there's quite a bit of theme and thematic work that we do too. It's fun.
Cool.
That's amazing.
And I'm starting to really enjoy composing as an art form. And now it's actually, there's a lot of composers that people really want to hear. It's become something that people really like to sit around and listen to. I think post Hans Zimmer's really, people will go see Hans Zimmer. People will go see John Williams. People will go see this stuff and they love it. And in Game of Thrones, remember Game of Thrones they'd go tour. And I'm sure Nine Inch Nails, I think they're probably playing a couple of new Tron songs. Nine Inch Nails just did Tron. I mean, it's probably play some of those live. It's pretty cool.
Not sure if you know Matt Mahaffey or not, but
I do.
People still ask after a new Self record, and it's like they keep making Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Man, he's busy.
I know. I got to see. He was like the second person I ever met, because he lived down the street from Ken when I first moved here. And yeah, he's been killing it ever since the day I met him. I mean, he's a mad genius. But yeah, it's fun. It's awesome that he has that, and that's so much work on a show like that. It's an intense amount of work. So, yeah, very happy for him.
If I don't know that the scoring muscle is something that he can get rid of. If he, the new Self song that came out last year, you're like, oh, I hear, that Danny Elfman gear is kicking in.
Yeah.
I wonder for you, if you think about what it would be like to sit down with an electric guitar and, write rock and roll music again, is it going to be, you think it'll creep in and influence that process?
Oh yeah. I'll be adding strings, and I'll be doing all sorts of things with it. But maybe that's not a bad thing. I mean, if you think about it in terms of that last Radiohead record, where A Moonshaped Pool, where Johnny's already now a well-established film score.
Yeah.
And Tom scored a couple too, but Johnny's really become an orchestrator.
Yeah.
And I think when you listen to Burn the Witch, and you get a plethora of, you get a whole string section on an amazing Radiohead song, and you're like, I wish there was 8 more of those songs on that record, because then things immediately turn sort of dour. But yeah, I mean, of course it's going to seep in there, and in some ways that's probably a great thing. I'd love to make a cinematic rock record, but I don't know when it would ever happen.
You're not helping my appetite over here, Jeff.
Well, like 2 weeks ago, I was like, man, I don't know. Once Virgin River's over, I don't know what I'm doing. And then, 2 days later, you have way too many things to do. So, because I was like, if I don't have anything to do this fall, I'll make some new songs.
Whether it is with Castor or Year of the Rabbit or National Skyline, we need more rock and roll from Jeff Garber.
I know.
We're right at an hour. So what a lovely thought to end on. Is a plea. please, Mr. Garber.
Oh, I appreciate it, and thanks so much for having me.
Thank you.
This has been really fun. Thanks a lot, Jeff. We appreciate the time.
Really appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Go out to the Bandcamp site, find the new Castor repress. I think there's still a couple of vinyl left, so that's our call to action for the episode.
Yes,
it does sound really, really nice on vinyl.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah. All right.
Great.
Thanks again.
Thanks so much, Jeff. Take care.
Thank you. All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Many thanks to Jeff for taking the time to chat with us.
This episode of Centre Stage was written and produced by Keith R. Higgins and Jeff Calhoun. The show was recorded at Thunderlove Studio, where it was engineered by
Daphne Morris,
with help from
Penetration,
edited by
Vic Titball,
with help from
Clem Fandango.
Our theme song is Cynical by Jaguar on Mars. You can stream Jaguar on Mars wherever you stream your favorite music. The songs you heard during this podcast were the theme song to Virgin River by Jeff Garber and Anecdotes and Silent Type by Castor. You also heard A Silent Night at the Drugstore by National Skyline, Strange Eyes, and Hunted by Year of the Rabbit. You can stream these wherever you stream your favorite music. Be sure to check out the show notes section for links to the respective bands' Bandcamp pages. Please remember to support independent music.
original music by Mike Pellegrino.
If you like what you've heard, please remember to subscribe and leave us a rating. It helps other people find the podcast. Thanks for listening.
Grazie.
Bailey Leaf,
Rob Janicki, Mike Pellegrino, Therina Vella,
S.W. Loudon,
Michael Janicki, Peyton Janicki.
This show's executive producer is Lulu McGillicuddy and is in the loving memory of
Lucas Thunderlow.
And now, until we meet again next time, I remain as always obediently yours.
Abandoned Albums is a production of Paw Print Media.